Hi everyone, this is Hira Irshad and I welcome you all in this very interesting episode of Getting Peshawar Started. Why I say that this is a very interesting episode because the guest that we have today is an extremely interesting man. And I'm sure that me and you will learn a lot from him. He's a biologist, he's worked extensively in neurosciences, and he has also been in lungs. So today I'm going to welcome Dr. Sohail, who is the director IIB. Dr. Sohail, I welcome you to Getting Peshawar Started.
Thank you very much, Hira. Pleasure to be here.
Dr. Sohail, tell us a little bit about your background. What have you done? What have you studied?
Well, I left Lahore at a young age and I went to Montreal. And so my early education was in Montreal as well as my college education. And then I came back to Pakistan. I got my master's in biology from Quaid-e-Azam University. And immediately after graduation, I went to the US to pursue my graduate studies, and which culminated in me getting my PhD in 1990 from the University of Maine. And then after that, I had several offers for postdoctoral training, and I chose to go into the area of mitochondrial gene expression. So I moved to Glasgow University, and I spent 3 years working with a very brilliant man, Howard Jacobs. He was a fellow of Royal Society. And then beyond that, I spent a year at the Imperial Cancer Research Fund in London. And then I moved to the University of Cambridge, where I had a reasonably lengthy stint as a senior research fellow. And there I was working on these organisms that are able to grow at really high temperatures, the hyperthermophiles. And so then there's a member in our family who has epilepsy, and she's very dear to me. And it had been a kind of a thing on my mind to study the mysteries of the brain. And we had a professor who was doing a sabbatical in Cambridge, and he basically, wanted me to move to Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin-Madison, in the Department of Neurology. So I moved there, and we were working on epilepsy and memory. And so there we discovered a group of genes that are turned on immediately after a seizure, and we patented that. And then we got funding from the Wisconsin Research Alumni Foundation to set up neurogenomics. That was my foray into the startup world. And in 2004, we decided to move back to Pakistan, and I joined the Aga Khan University. And then in 2011, moved to Lahore, which is home to me. And I joined the School of Science and Engineering at Lahore University of Management Sciences, where I was appointed as the dean of the school. About a year, almost 2 years ago, I joined the Institute of Integrative Biosciences. It's a department, some of you might have heard that name, associated with iGEM. Some of the successes that Pakistani teams have had in iGEM 2016, 2017. And I'm currently leading the institute and really enjoying myself. There's so much to do here in terms of, teaching and mentoring.
So what kind of work is being done in the entrepreneurship sector, and especially in the domain of biotechnology in Pakistan?
Not too much, unfortunately. Life sciences, the boom that there is throughout the world, that boom is not felt in this country. Unfortunately, because life sciences are really moving very quickly. And I think a lot of it has to do with the convergence. A lot of other disciplines are sort of understanding the needs of biology. And so nobody's really working in legacy areas. Very few people work in legacy areas. Because there's been a thinning of those areas. So a physicist is thinking about, how the different components of a cell, how do they move around? A chemist is thinking about how do I go about discovering drugs that will, that will deal with a certain condition. Mathematicians are busy building, models, biological systems ke, epidemiological studies. CS itself is a very large platform because whether you do basic programming or not, we all use computers.
Yeah.
And so how can you live without computers? And now with big data and biology, we have a problem on our hands that we have much more data than we know what to do with. And we need CS people to sort of, sift, through that information, through the databases. And so in Pakistan, there is the pharmaceutical companies who pretty much do manufacturing. R&D, to my knowledge, I don't think there's much R&D going on in the area of biotechnology in Pakistan. But having said that, there are a lot of opportunities. But then having said that, there is a real paucity for well-trained manpower. If you have an idea, then you need people, you need to put together teams to sort of, achieve the results. The other thing is that biotech requires a fair amount of money.
Yeah.
It depends. You can do in silico biotech, you can do computer-based biotech, and there are companies, for example, there is insilico.com, and they're using artificial intelligence and other technologies to sort of, deal with some of the pressing problems that are associated with discovering new drugs. In silico biology is another company, and what they do is sort of build mathematical models through which you can engineer cells, you can engineer pathways, you can optimize processes, etc. So I think you don't really need, biotech entrepreneurship doesn't always require a wet lab kind of a thing where, you're doing experiments on the bench, test tubes and, organisms. You can also do computer-based, entrepreneurship in biotechnology.
So Dr. Saab, you said that there isn't much that we're doing in the entrepreneurial ecosystem and biotechnology right now. But do you think that there are some areas that young entrepreneurs who do not have a lot of money can work on? What are those areas, if there are any?
Well, as I alluded to, biotech entrepreneurship doesn't have to be, you don't really require a laboratory for that. There are some areas within biotechnology entrepreneurship that you could sort of deal with using, computers. And some of these areas such as artificial intelligence. And so the two companies that I talked about, and there are many others. I think a large company that comes to mind is Viva Systems. And they are in the business of solving some of the pharmaceutical industry's problems in terms of integrating all the data. But a lot can be done using computers. So that means, sifting through the databases, and through that you can also generate intellectual property. IBM has a very large initiative called Watson that is able to predict disease onset. And so what Watson is capable of doing is predicting what kind of cancer this person is going to have, and according to that is able to recommend what kind of drugs should be given to that person. And apparently the success rate of that has been very high because what comes out of Watson is like almost 99% in agreement with what's going on in the hospital by the doctors.
Right.
And so, there's a fair amount, but I think the problem is that the biology people don't know CS and the CS people don't know biology.
They'll have to come together.
They'll have to come together. And to solve that problem, we'll have to sort of tweak the curricula. For example, somebody who does pre-engineering pursues, mathematics, physics, and chemistry in their FSC, intermediate.
Yes.
And somebody who does pre-medical does physics, chemistry, and biology. And so the ideal curriculum would be that, everybody who's doing, sciences at the intermediate level, goes through biology, math, physics, chemistry, as well as computer science. And biology has changed. It's no longer the biology of the 70s and 80s. It's not about taxonomies anymore. It's not about, just learning stuff. Biology today, you can sort of see a lot of biology on the cover of New York Times, for example.
Yeah.
Anthrax, stem cells, tissue engineering, bioremediation, genetically engineered organisms. And that's something that, I've been teaching introductory level courses for many years now. And at LUMS, for example, we have biology. At the School of Science and Engineering, everybody has to study biology. Whether you're going to do computer science or electrical engineering or mathematics, our core curriculum, LUMS core curriculum, used to involve biology. So we had, for example, I remember we had somebody in electrical engineering who wanted to do a project in biology. He was interested in sort of this area of bioengineering and biosensors.
Yeah.
Okay, for example, somebody who has diabetes. So you can easily imagine some kind of a biosensor that is implanted in that person. That is sort of, monitoring the sugar levels.
Yeah.
As the sugar levels go up, there is a device that pumps a proportionate amount of insulin into that person. And so, now you could be on autopilot, sleep, awake. You don't need to worry about hypoglycemia. You don't need to worry about fainting. Epilepsy, for example, a device that is able to detect seizure onset, electrical, sort of hyperexcitement. That's what leads to seizures. Mirgi कहते हैं जिसको, झटके लगने शुरू हो जाते हैं. And imagine such a device that picks up a seizure onset and then does something to prevent that seizure. And so there you can sort of figure out where a electrical device, electronic device comes in and where the biology comes in.
So Dr. Saab, you've been with the academia and you've also done a lot of research and then you stepped into the startup world. Tell us about your startup journey. What was it all about?
Well, that, in hindsight, that happened accidentally. We were, trying to identify genes that would get turned on immediately after a seizure. And the products of those genes would then end up sort of rewiring that part of the brain through which, additional seizures would be facilitated. So seizures beget seizures. Just some deep passion for, research and trying to understand, neuronal plasticity, as we call it. Because the brain is just comprised of, billions of cells that are connected to each other. And we sort of refer the whole organ as a connectome, because depending on what kind of connections there are, that would translate into a different kind of a device. So pure act serendipity, we discovered, we patented it, and apparently I happened to be in an ecosystem where Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation, they used to sort of talk to the PIs quite frequently. Sort of, casual conversation over a cup of tea, hey, what's going on? Because, an investigator is really busy doing his or her own thing. And within that, you sort of forget about the applications of what you're doing to, to human health or whatever. And so one of those conversations led to the foundation, agreeing to give us a certain amount of seed money so we could develop. So this is part of a very healthy ecosystem where entrepreneurship is encouraged. And so we put together a business plan, etc. And the company took off. I didn't stay there for that long, but that whole process of sort of getting neurogenomics to a point where hiring was taking place and things were happening, that was very exciting. And of course, in a startup, the most exciting thing is that because you have very few people, everybody needs to wear different hats. So one day you might need to broom the floor, next day you might need to wash the dishes. The same person is the chief technical officer. So that's what you just learn, a whole bunch of things by wearing different hats, and you shouldn't have any hang-ups on that. If you do, you're not an entrepreneur.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, for being with us and for sharing such amazing things with us. I'm sure that everything that you talked about today has motivated a lot of people to study more biotechnology and to come up with more ideas, because we have a lot of opportunities here. Not much work has been done. Thank you very much for giving us your time. I'm sure that this was a great learning journey for me and for all of you. Thank you.